Got you. I gotta hide him now.
All right, Brandon. EJ Gaines signed this morning. Tell us, kind of what went into that decision and what does he bring?
Yeah, you guys are familiar with EJ. In 17 when we traded for him, and he's an instinctual player. We lost him in free agency last year, but it's good to have him back. He had a little injury in Cleveland, and he was out there, and we just stayed in touch with his agents, and kind of worked it out for him to come in today, and worked out the parameters before he got here, and we're glad to have him back for a year, and it's kind of a chance for him to show he can stay healthy and try and fight to win a starting job.
Does I was going to say, adding Johnson, does it really speak to it being a wide open spot, that corner position opposite Trey?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Levi ended the year in that spot and he did a solid job, but we're not handing jobs out, so it's an open competition with all these guys. And listen, we still have the draft. We could add someone there to throw in the mix, but we feel we've got some competent guys that have shown they can do it, and I think competition is the best for everybody.
Was that the focus heading into free agency, was adding so much talent and competition at each of these positions to really fuel that heading into OTAs and camp?
Yeah, I think everybody here, we all compete at something, and if you've got somebody that's pushing you, you're naturally going to do a little extra, and so we're trying to add as much competition across the board, whether it was a need area or not. And that's the great thing. We still got the draft, we still got those picks, and even undrafted. You saw we had guys that played that didn't even get drafted. Speaking of Levi, and Robert Foster were probably the two bigger names, but Corey Thompson, late in the year. So again, we'll try and add as much competition between now and the spring, and shoot, training camp. We could find somebody there from a trade or something else. We'll continue to try and add it at all spots.
Is free agency, as far as a shopping thing, would you call yourself at the end, or how would you?
Yeah, I think we're again, you never stop looking. So if there's a guy out there that we think is a good deal, and maybe was a guy that thought he was going to get a higher deal and didn't get it, and we think he fits us schematically and obviously our culture, then we would still look to add players if it's a spot of need.
15 UFAs you guys signed. That's counting Duke Williams, by the way. 12 of them on offense, only 3 on defense. Was that the way you envisioned it going, knowing what your needs were?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't say we're going to add X number of players, but we knew, as I said in the press conference last week, was that offensively, our statistics were not where you want to be, and that that affected our win-loss record. And so we wanted to really focus on that again, so that when we go into the draft, we're not drafting for need, we're drafting best player available.
And to that point, now that you are able to fully focus on the draft, the way you approach free agency and what you came away from it, how can you sort of characterize the draft plan as it's been influenced by your free agent moves, getting what you got and maybe what you set out to get or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely do look at the draft board and see where there's areas that you go, there's a lot of depth at this position, on both sides of the ball. Maybe we don't need to be as aggressive in free agency. I think we were aggressive in a couple of areas, and maybe we were nervous that there wasn't a lot of depth there. That let's go ahead and handle that now, so that it doesn't put the onus, if you miss those top 2 or 3 guys at a certain position, that now you're really getting down to guys that you're really not sure what kind of upgrade it is.
Tell us what happens. Fans kind of like to know how it all works between now, the mechanics of what you guys are doing behind the scenes right now. Where are you in your process as far as free agency, setting up draft board, things like that?
Yeah, so the last time we touched the draft board was right before Indy, before we went to the Combine. And we're doing pro days, and privates, and then we'll bring these guys in for the 30. We'll bring our college scouts back, and we got kind of this week, and then I'm hitting the road as soon as we leave here and through next week. Pro days will end probably next Thursday. I think it's the last one. That next Friday, I think it's April 5th, I'll come back, and our college scouts will be there waiting, and we'll go back and start going through the board and trying to we got guys in clumps. We'll get back on the film and start grading. If we got 3 running backs in the 3rd round, we'll start making sure do they all belong there, and what's the order if they were all available, should we be picking at that time.
How much better do you feel about your team now than before free agency?
You know, you feel better that we answered some holes, but my nature is that I don't rest easy, and I'm still looking for ways for us to add more competition, however it be. Again, I say it all the time. We have conversations with, you know, this is a great spot for trades to happen, and I'm not saying there's anything brewing. There's not, but if a GM, you know, approached us now that there's a guy that we thought, hey, trade this to get this player that we think is an upgrade or an added competition, you know, we would still look to make that move. So I feel better, but I still think we have a ways to go.
Philosophically, how do you kind of approach that second wave of free agency, and how important is it in the big picture when you're planning your off season?
Well, you still want to make sure they fit. You don't want to just sign a guy that maybe you weren't targeting all along. If you remember, I told you we had Tier 1 players, Tier 2, Tier 3. Wherever he falls in that tier, if he was a guy that didn't fit you schematically or culture or anything like that, then it's still not worth the bite at a low cost, because it's not a fit. It's not a guy you really want to build around. But if there are guys that we said it's an area that we targeted, and maybe we felt we pretty much filled that need, but then his market drops and he's looking for a spot and he thinks he's got a good chance to win it by what we've added, and you know, if it's a good value, we would still look to do that.
It's no secret that, you know, a lot of people are saying that the Bills have had quite a good offseason so far. Being here around a lot of your contemporaries, what's some of the feedback that you've gotten about, you know, the job you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, people compliment you, you know, especially if you're nationally, you're getting recognition and things like that. But at the end of the game, you know, at the end of the day, there's no games won in March. And, you know, adding talent is one thing. We got to build this team. So we have added a lot of new players, but now we got to blend them into our culture and to, you know, our expectations and what we do every day. So it's not an automatic that they're going to play at least at the level they were or better. Hopefully they do, but we still got a lot of work to do once we get these guys here starting, you know, in a couple weeks.
On the radio today, you said you hadn't had a chance to really digest some of the rules changes. You don't have to be specific on what you voted on, but what is the general feeling of you and the organization on expanding replay or overtime changes?
Yeah, so the votes have not happened yet,
right,
and we're still listening. Some of the meetings we've been going in is listening to the different viewpoints of coaches and GMs, and we haven't had any sessions with owners yet, so I haven't heard their feelings on it. But there's a lot of debates. Everybody's trying to get it right. It's the problem is you fix this, but then there's the unintended consequences of this. What happened? Pace of play of games, or now you're scrutinizing. You know, there's even talking about replays of maybe a personal foul should have been called, and it wasn't called, but can you replay it or not? So I don't know what the best solution is going to be. I have my thoughts and ideas, but I think there's still a lot to be worked out over the next couple of days, and it could even be that maybe there's a couple of resolutions that they want to talk about, and then we'll get voted on in May as well.
Are you comfortable with any part of the officiating process happening, in New York as opposed to the game site?
Yeah, you know, that's a tough question, Vic, in the sense that I think it has, you know, it is good in certain areas, but it's not good enough at this time. And hopefully, but I know the league office is trying to get it right. There's a lot from adding full-time officials, and I'm sure, you know, all the angles and all the cameras out there, you know, allows us to scrutinize it hard enough. But you don't want to see what happened in the NFC Championship, and so I think that's one of the goals here, is not to just be reactive to that, but how can we prevent things like that, happening again.
Brandon, in all your signings, you haven't really addressed the defensive line at all outside of re-signing Jordan Phillips. Where do you think that stands today, and I guess what are your thoughts on that going into the future as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some guys, you know, that are competing in there. Obviously, we brought Jordan back, and again, there are still free agents out there that we could add. We've talked to some, but again, we're not going to sign guys that we don't think fit or really add, you know, above what we've got on the roster. So again, we'll continue to look, and you know, we got the draft as well, so that's another spot that, you know, at the right place, if there was a guy there, maybe we select him.
Brandon, with so much talk about the talent on the front seven and the defense in this draft, especially along the line and the edge, what does that do for teams that might want to go offense, whether it's a tackle, whether it's receiver, tight end even this year? There's talk about maybe 3 in the first round perhaps. does that create a lot of uncertainty as to where those guys might go, and therefore, do you need to trade up, or are you comfortable trading down? Does it throw that into a loop?
Well, I think you got to make sure you get the values on your board right on what fits you and not what everybody else sees. And if you think there's depth, which I would agree with you on the defensive line, there seems to be depth there. It doesn't. With the depth, it allows you not to put as much pressure that you've got to get a guy early. You know, some guys will fall because of depth, because as the draft goes along, people will tend to start drafting more towards need than they do early on. Now, I mean, maybe some teams still draft for need in the first, but I think philosophically you'll see once you start filling a couple of best player availables that do fill holes towards the end of the draft, you do kind of have to start looking to need. So if there's truly depth at any position, D-line or whatever, I think it allows you not to say, man, I've got to get him in the first or second round, or I'm not going to get a guy that can help.
Has it been nice for you guys to see the AAF play, and maybe you can get a look at some of those guys? I know you can't sign them, but there are guys out there trying to get back in the league who've played recently. Is that good for you as a GM to see them right now in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's the closest thing you can get. When we bring them in, if they haven't been playing, it's a workout in T-shirt and shorts, and guys can look great. We've seen that at the Combine and other. So to see them playing football, and I think, you know, Bill Polian and all those have done a great job of, you know, trying to put a product together that's, you know, NFL standard, and the coaches and the staff that they've hired and the players. And I've watched some of the games, some on TV, and I think it's good for our league and any other league that goes on that's run the right way. And the thing that's created is if they can model them as much like the NFL, which I think that one has done so far. I think that's the best way for us to evaluate these players and how they would fit, whether it's a guy that's been in the league or a guy that's never had a shot. You see him, hey, let's see what he can do.
Brandon, John brought up tight ends, and in the NFL, obviously, they're super impactful if you find a really good one, but it seems like the hit rate in the first round isn't that great. A lot of these guys like Gronkowski, Kelsey, the top of the heap guys, they come in the later rounds. So what are the kind of pros and cons of taking a tight end that early when it's such a precious resource?
Yeah, I think you have to look at each, you know, situation different. You know, sometimes guys fall for medical or for, you know, character or other things. It's not necessarily ability all the time. So again, I think you put your value on them and you trust your instincts if they fit. And if you valued them in the first, then you should take them in the first. But I don't think you can. I mean, it's the same thing. Receivers, there's been a lot of first-round receiver bust, but you've got to do your due diligence. And, you know, obviously that's a warning sign for you. But if you still feel at the end of the day that they fit what you do and that their talent is worthy of that, then you just select them.
Is there a danger to you in drafting in the first round, especially as high as you are, for non-premium positions, if you don't believe that those to be that sort of way?
Well, to me, you draft the best player available.
Okay.
And so if the so-called premium positions are gone, or you don't have a guy that is up there, the premium position, you shouldn't take them just because it's a non. You should 100% of the time take the best player on your board, but you're considering that when where you value them on the board, whether it's a high first round, mid first round, or low first round.
How does Rob Gronkowski's retirement impact the kind of the competitive balance of Bills and the AFC East and the Bills versus Patriots?
If he could take Brady with him, that'd help. No, I mean, Rob has had a heck of a career. He's obviously been a thorn in the whole league side in the AFC East and the Bills even before I got there. And, you know, he's a really good player. He's been a big part of the success that team has had, you know, on such a run since he got there. And so, you know, you appreciate what he's done. At the same time, am I sad that he's retiring? No. We'll welcome him back to Buffalo. We'll have some wings for him if he wants to come watch the game.
You have about 6 weeks here before you have to determine Shaq's fifth-year option. Will what happens in the draft have any impact on that? Or is that totally a separate decision?
Totally separate. We're drafting best player available. And again, let's just say you guys say we have a need that we don't hit in the draft. I'll say it again. I'm going to probably say it after the draft. If you say, you know what, you guys didn't answer this question, there's still May, June, July. We don't play ball, and sometimes I even have to remind our coaches, we don't play ball until, you know, August, September. So there's different ways to add players and talent to the roster, and you have to be patient. It's not a rush to just fill every spot and get to 90. I don't think that's the right way. Be judicious, be smart, and let's end up with the best 90 when we show up at St. John Fisher.
Going into year 3, how difficult has it been to be patient with the rebuild?
You know,
Is that harder than people think?
Yeah, it's hard at times because you're competitive and you want to win. But if you put a plan together and everybody's on the same page, and I think that's where Sean, myself, and the Bagulas, we all are in agreement on what this plan looked like from at least when I got here till where we're at now. We've tried to methodically execute it. And listen, I've made mistakes along the way, and I'm probably going to make more. And you know, I appreciate Terry and Kim that that's one of the things Terry said. He said, I can live with honest mistakes, and you're going to happen. And it's freeing to know that you don't have to feel like you're being judged every time you make a move and it doesn't work out exactly the way you thought. And that's why I'm going to continue at times to be aggressive when it means to be aggressive, but we'll follow the plan, you know, as strict as we can, and you know, hopefully it ends up, you know, where we see it, you know, trending.
Okay.